In this video, we'll be demonstrating how to use the Genian NAC agent and the script plugin to be able to execute scripts on an endpoint to enforce various enforcement policies or control the endpoint in any manner you wish. So we're on a machine here that has the Genian NAC agent installed. This particular agent happens to have a bunch of plugins activated. The one we'll be covering today is the script control plugin right here. We have the web console up for Genian NAC policy server hosted in the Genian's cloud. We also have on this endpoint, we have a couple of browser tabs open, one to an HTTPS site, another to an HTTP site. And we also have a ping running just for network traffic test. So let's take a look at the configuration inside of Genian NAC. If we navigate to Policy and Enforcement Policy, here's the two applicable policies that we have here today. One is to actually quarantine nodes that we want to quarantine. So this particular policy, under a normal circumstance, would be integrated with the third-party external system that is monitoring for threats. For example, this one is called Quarantine IBM Resilient SOAR Threats. So with this kind of integration, Resilient SOAR would send an API call to Genian NAC and apply or remove a tag to the node, and then an action would take place. So for demo purposes here, we'll be manually applying that tag, as the purpose of this demo is not for security automation, but just to demo the PowerShell script we'll be running. So any node that matches on this enforcement policy, in this case it will be this machine, which is 1.40. If the tag is also present, it will match, and then it's going to execute a plugin inside of the agent. So this particular plugin that we'll be executing is here, block web traffic with the firewall. So basically what we're doing here, as the title and the description imply, is we're actually going to be blocking web access on this endpoint through the Windows Defender firewall, and we're going to be configuring the firewall dynamically in real time through a PowerShell script. So if I scroll down and look here, the actual plugin we're utilizing, of course there's many plugins to choose from, but we're going to be utilizing the run script plugin. And then we have a series of commands. In this particular case, we're actually going to block all outbound traffic on the firewall. And then we're going to allow DNS, DHCP, and then we're going to allow communication to our Genian NAC policy server, and then everything else will be blocked. This will be executed using the agent default account. So in this case, we installed the agent and ran it as administrator, so it has the elevated privileges required. Now, the other enforcement policy is to release IBM Resilient SOAR threat nodes. So in this case, once my particular machine here, which is this 1.40 IP, no longer has the threat assigned and we're only matching on the IP, then we're actually going to revert the firewall back using another PowerShell script. So if I look at this script, this agent action is allow web traffic with firewall, restore the default. So if I look here, you'll see we're utilizing the same plugin, the run script plugin, and this is basically resetting the Windows Defender firewall to default values, which will essentially remove the quarantine for the endpoint. So that is what the configuration looks like. If we want to just review again where we're at in real time, we go back to policy again, enforcement policy. And right now, this particular node that I'm on is actually in the release enforcement policy, meaning it's not quarantined. So there's no node tag assigned here. It has access as noted by the ability to access these two websites, as well as validating that the ping is still executing and getting responses. So what we'll do now is we will mimic actually assigning the threat tag. We'll do this manually in a real world production environment, whatever that external system is, whether it be IBM Resilient SOAR, Palo Alto, Infoblox, DDI, or any kind of SIM, any device that can either send syslog events to Genian NAC or access it through the REST API would be able to dynamically assign these node tags in real time. So what we're going to do here is we're going to select the node, and we are going to click on Edit Node Tags. We're going to assign a tag, in this case the IBM Resilient Threat tag. We'll click Save. And now if we go back to Policy, Enforcement Policy, we'll see that we've switched and now we're matching on this policy. Also, if we look at the node itself, you'll see the node tag is now applied. So now let's take a look at our access. Here we can try to load that page. That's going to fail. We'll try an HTTP page, fails, and the ping has now failed. So we'll take a look at the Windows Defender Firewall. So here we'll see if I refresh this. Here's the previous settings. Notice outbound connections for these various profiles is allowed, right, which is the default. If I go refresh this and look again, you'll see outbound connections are blocked unless there's an explicit rule. So the PowerShell script executed several commands. The first command was actually to block the outbound connections for all profiles. Now, if you look at the outbound rules, they're actually all the same. However, the only one of these rules that is actually working is this rule. This rule was one that was added by the script. And essentially what that does is it allows access to the Genian NAC IP and on all ports. So what we've done essentially is block all outbound access and then add a few rules for DNS, DHCP, and the Genian NAC access, and everything else is blocked. So in a real world scenario, what that means is when a threat tag is assigned dynamically by any external system, we have a real-time block on the endpoint utilizing the agent. This, of course, doesn't require any network integration as this is all client-server based. Just the system monitoring for threats, the Genian NAC policy server in the cloud, and the endpoint with the agent installed are the only components utilized. So now what we'll do is we'll reverse this. What we're going to do now is simulate that the threat has been remediated and whatever the external system is, in this case IBM Resilient SOAR, is going to send back another API call and it's going to tell Genian NAC that the threat's no longer present. So what will happen there, we'll go ahead and edit the node tag. This time, instead of assigning a tag, we're going to remove the tag. We're going to remove the IBM Resilient Threat tag, click Save. Okay. And now if we go back and look, the pings are already coming back. I'll be able to load both the SSL, the HTTP websites all load now. And when we look at the node itself, back under the policy view, it moved back from the threat to the quarantine to the release policy. And then if I look at the node view again in the node list, the tag is gone. So the threat tag has been removed. Lastly, if we go back and look at Windows Defender, so here were the rules that were dynamically added, and you recall that we had actually blocked the profiles. Well, now when I go look at the profiles, Now outbound connections are allowed. So the default values have all been restored for the firewall. Outbound connections are allowed. And then these other rules that were previously there that were added, the Genian NAC rule, etc., those are gone. So these are just all the default rules that were previously in the firewall. So that's how you leverage the Genian NAC agent to execute a PowerShell script. That is actually just one example of how you could actually utilize that. Of course, well, you could initiate any kind of script you like. So the run script plugin in the Genian NAC agent allows you to do anything that you can with any kind of script on the endpoint. This was just one example, one particular use case. And of course, there's also many other plugins that can be used to collect information and to quarantine or control the endpoint in some other type of fashion, and to do all sorts of things on the endpoint. In this particular situation, we just utilized the run script plugin, and we just executed a script on the endpoint for this particular use case. But obviously, there's many other things you could do with the agent aside from that single plugin. For more information, visit genians.com. Thank you.